Hi, this is Jim Chambers with Jim Chambers Music Box. You are listening to Rock at Night.
Are you ready? Tonight I'm gonna take you on a little trip. We're going down south by the mighty Mississippi. I'm gonna take you to a place where lights never dim. Bring your mother, your brother, and your best friend. I'm gonna show you where they dance out in the street. They'll tell you all about your body heat. I'm not gonna talk about it, just gonna do it. Get on down if you feel up good. Get on down.
This is Charisse with Rock at Night, and we are here with Jim Chambers of Jim Chambers Music Box here in Tampa, Florida. Hello, Jim.
Hey, how are you doing, Charisse?
Tell me, what is Jim Chambers Music Box, and how long have you been here?
Jim Chambers Music Box is the finest music academy on the planet. We're a learning facility based in Carrollwood, Tampa, Florida. We teach all instruments: bass, guitar, singing, band formation. We've been here 3 years in this location. This 3 years this July 2018. We'll mark 3 years that we're in this location, which is right off Gun Highway.
So you're kind of like a school of rock, I would say?
Well, we are in what that means. They are a competitor of ours, so we don't reference School of Rock. But we do teach young persons to form rock bands. We stay together. We make records. We do photo shoots. So our band formation class is a bit more robust. So band formation is a important component to the box.
Most of your students, what is the age category that you deal with?
Oh, gosh. Well, the student body ages in range from 3, we have a 3-year-old, to 70. I have a 70-year-old drum student. For the bands, it really does vary. We have, we have to keep them somewhat of the same age and same ability level. So one of our bands is 16, 17. One of them are 12, 13, 14. So we typically have one in each. Right now I have a 7, 8-year-old band, which is just super. And then, as I mentioned, 12, 14, and then a 16, 18.
That's interesting about the 70-year-olds. So you deal with adults as well. I mean, maybe somebody wants to, or like a retired person, go back and pick up an instrument.
All day long. Yeah, often our lunch, we have students that are adults that come on their lunch break. So 12 to 2 o'clock, it's filled with adults. And I would say we have at least 15, 16 adult students that come every week.
So the idea, most of the students come here because they want to meet other students and form a band. The whole dream thing is kind of, the purpose.
Well, let me say, sort of. We were voted Band Incubator by Creative Loafing last year. So there are more than a couple students per month do come through seeking only band formation. So they're looking specifically for that. Most others do come through the door looking to learn an instrument. But once they've been here 6, 8 months, 10 months, and they're really excelling, we're always looking it's almost like a farm team for our bands. So yeah, we're always looking at students and asking them, not pushing, but sort of angling them towards bands. Yes.
What are some of the bands that you've worked with?
Well, here at the box or throughout career?
Let's talk here at the box, and then we want to find out a little bit about your background.
Well, here in Tampa, let's see. I'll go back. We started with A Long Way from Kansas, who did quite well. They won Battle of the Bands in Tampa. Sunday Secret was an act that we made a record. It's on YouTube. Extra Celestial was an all-female group that did quite well. They were featured on the cover of Creative Loafing. Inkblot, we made a record together, EP. Sick Hot is a current act that I'm working with that gigs out quite often. We're going to make a record with Sean Kyle, who's a local producer in Tampa, in mid-August, which is a big deal for us. Also, I'm working with Favorite Habit, who's a great act, young, that are just really come together as a band. I can't wait to really expose them to Tampa. So gosh, that's 7. And then I have 2 others that are unnamed but really explosive students that are ready to just pop. And they come from these other bands. Some of these bands, they often graduate or go to college. So like A Long Way from Kansas, they've been in college 2 years now. Well, the remnants of that, the younger guys that were in the band, are all forming bands here at the Bach. So it all comes full circle, and it's like our own little swimming pool of bands. And I do think it will. I'm going off rail here, but we're creating culture, and it will affect the music culture here in Tampa in the next decade to 2 decades.
So, do you do kind of a full service deal when these bands form? Do you help get them gigs or get the word out there and groom them, essentially?
Yes, when they signed up, when the band is formed and they're in the guise of the band formation program and myself, you get me as a manager. Well, I do all management responsibilities, from social media, grooming, repertoire, photo shoots, immediately talking about original material, writing, how you look on stage, how you perform, how you entertain. All of those things are covered from day one. And it's great. I love doing it. It's a bubble that I'm comfortable living in.
So it's really the full package. It's not just the craft of learning an instrument. It's everything that goes around the industry. And you've been in the industry for a while, so let's talk about that. How did you get here to Tampa, and what is your background?
Well, I keep giggling. One, because it's interesting to talk about yourself, and I'm not accustomed to it. But it's a long story. But I don't know how brief you would like me to be, Charisse. I'll just start running, and you tell me when to stop. I was born in New York, and then Dad was an IBM guy, so we moved a bit. We went from New York to Raleigh, and then I went to high school in Tampa. All throughout that time, I was a full-blown music junkie. As a kid, I was the guy that made cassettes for the girls, slipped them in the locker, and we were talking earlier that I used to go to the record store and write down the producers' names and who played drums and who's on bass of records. That's what I used to do. So I had this just yearning to understand how this all worked, and as a young guy. So as I got to Tampa, I went to high school at Chamberlain High School, and then straight to college, I went to Valdosta State. I got a degree in business. Everything I focused on in college, I would steer towards music. Whether it was a paper I had to write, I would write a paper on IRS records. If it was a public speaking thing, I would talk about a band and how they formed. So everything, I purposely kind of created that for myself. I don't know, because I was interested. It's like, if I have to go research something, let's go look that up on the microfiche. So shout out to microfiche. So there I was, post-college. I'm like, what am I going to do? At the time, networking was a concept that was new and was still malleable. Like, I could go to a record store, say Wax and Facts in Atlanta, and say, I knew that person. Say, hey, do you know anybody that at Chrysalis or the big record label? Certainly enough, they did. And I would call the guy at Chrysalis and say, hey, Danny said I could come talk to you. I worked my way into a couple branch managers' office, specifically Universal, Capitol, EMI. I got into their office. I was in a briefcase and a suit, looking like a chump green guy right out of college. Not rock and roll at all. But I would get information from them. If I can't get into record label world, what do I do? All of them said, just go to retail. And I'm like, okay, sure enough. Retail, I hadn't really worked in retail. My high school jobs were either playing drums or delivering pizza. It was always easier. So I meet with the labels. I go into retail. In Atlanta, I was in Atlanta at this point. In Atlanta, there was a chain store called Turtles. Some of them were in Florida too. Pretty large record store chain. I went into their management trainee program. I go in, I learn. Before I know it, I'm a third key in a record store north of Atlanta in Roswell, Georgia. So there I was, managing a record store for a couple of years. in that record store, all record reps from Warner Brothers, EMI, every Polygram, on and on, Elektra, Enigma, everybody would come there and hang displays or make displays at record stores. They're called merchandisers. That was the biggest, dreamiest job I could ever imagine. There I was behind the reg, ringing up, it wasn't Oasis Records, ringing up Alice in Chains Records, and the Warner Brothers is up there hanging posters. Boy, I envied that person. So sure enough, every one of those reps I befriended, I spoke to them, and there was a small indie in Atlanta called Sky Records. And Sky had some cool acts on it, and some of which were so important at the time. I was in Atlanta, and Athens, Georgia was a real hot spot for music. Sky Records had the Flat Duo Jets, which is a desert island band for me, Lava Love, Insane Jane, The Swans, Jazz Butcher, all these cool records. And I was able to get a job in the mailroom. I was thrilled. Amy Ray was part owner of this label. She saw me in the mailroom, said, "Put that kid on the phone. He talks too much." Here I go. So they put me on the phone. I call every record store on the planet for 3 years straight. So all of a sudden, I have a skill set. I can speak and I can talk to record stores, and essentially I'd call them, hey, I would call all these guys down here, Vinyl Fever, Daddy Cool. I've known Tony since 1993. Yada, yada, shout out to Daddy Cool. That was my job. I would call every record store, make sure they had inventory, make posters, tour support, do some regional advertising. Well, I got fired from Sky. No big whoop. I was young. I was just kicking butt, thinking everything was amazing. I left Sky. I was desperately looking for another record job. And from there, Sony BMG hired me. I really worked my way into that branch. I knew all the players involved and was able to get that job. Just for the record, it was all who I knew at this point. It was not answering an online ad. I get into BMG Sony. I get the job. They're like, by the way, you got to move to Miami for the job. So I go to Miami. I'm a field marketing merchandiser rep. I get to hang Weird Al posters and TLC and just all these titles. I mean, Ace of Base. I could tell you so many titles. We were breaking pop acts like crazy. Ace of Base was huge. Tony Braxton, TLC, anything on LaFace, anything on Arista, especially in the Miami market, we were killing it. My accounts were Specs Music and Peaches, and I was down there shoveling records into those stores. They moved me back to Atlanta. I got a promotion. I was a product development coordinator, which is a regional marketing guy. It's a big step for me. So all of Sony's alternative artists, anything on their alternative roster, I would devise and implement marketing plans regionally. So Atlanta South, I got the whole place. I'm wheeling and dealing. I got white hair. I'm doing punk rock records, and I'm marketing them. I love what I'm doing, and it's going great. We're working bands like Self and Tool. Dave Matthews was certainly in the mix. I was a big part of that. We were working Outcast Records, some crossover products. Yada, yada. So having a ball, got fired from that job. Oh my gosh. Can't really go into the details, but boy, the long story of that is it was political and it was nuts, and I had no idea about it until recently when a branch manager told me the whole story. But that's a whole nother track. I'm still in Atlanta. I don't have a job. It's the Olympics. What am I going to do? 1996. New York calls. It's Sire Hybrid Records. They need a national director of sales. I have that skill set. I've called every record store on the planet for 5 years at this point and marketed in the South. So national director of sales. I moved to New York City. I'm the happiest guy on earth. I get a place in Brooklyn. It was $1,100. I was stoked. I worked for that company. We broke Guster. I worked Art Garfunkel, Mike Errico. Not major hits. We did a lot of PBS Broadway products, specialty releases that sold plenty of records, but they were more on the Broadway PBS tip. We sold a lot of things through IFC, like an alternative sampler for IFC's indie films, a lot of specialty products. But that was really a learning curve for me. I had to run it all, whether it's marketing to library. That's a whole nother subject too. But that particular job was very sales specific, marketing, new markets, developing new business channels. And it was great. I was there 7 years. I wanted out because it was just what it was. That company also did Woodstock, which was lit on fire. Uh, so they had a adjunct record label. So there we were. I was really looking around for another job. A small label had been courting me for about a year, and at that time, record executives had contracts. And courting means they really liked what I was doing and was watching some of the moves I made. And so that continued. I took a job with Octone Records. They had a band called Maroon. Maroon sounded okay. I didn't love it, but it was passable. And this is sort of on the tail end of boy bands. The last thing I wanted to hear was that. However, this boy band could play their instruments and they were pretty handsome. So I took a job at Octone Records. I was VP of sales and marketing. We broke Maroon 5. That was my sole focus for 2 years straight. Songs About Jane was worked to radio. Oh my gosh. Endless campaign there. Was able to break the act and cross it over to Jay. It was Jay Rex. Jay and RCA had a upstream deal where we would take a band to a certain level and then we would upstream it to the big boys. Like, time to turn over this project to the $1 million guys. So that was Jay Records. Jay Records took that record to Stratosphere, and that job ended. We were contracted. That job ended. I was not rehired. It was a big shock. I was upset. I was, I won 2 Grammys with that project. It was a big letdown. And personally, professionally, in the industry, I'm in New York. I've got a rep. Things are going well. Bam, I got no job. So I really did some soul searching there because the industry was imploding. Everything was gone. Every major retailer was shrinking their square footage of what they carried on titles on hand. The whole thing was just scary. I was looking at other places. I was looking at new media. I landed a consulting job at VH1 for about 18 months. That was a really interesting experience. Different media focus, different bosses. I remember I had to fill out a form to get a form one time. It was just bananas. But very interesting experience there. I had a lot of great elbow rubs. And then there was a new label, relatively new. The owner of Warped Tour, Kevin Lyman, and the owner of Concrete Marketing, a large metal marketing firm in New York, formed a label. They called it Warcon. Warped and Concrete, Warcon. They had great acts on this label. They had about 10 when I started. I was hired as GM. Big job for me. I come on. We got 10 projects in the hopper that have already been out. They did very well. We're coming up on sophomore records for about 6 titles. They were very important records for these bands. A lot of OC punk rock, a lot of Warped Tour, very specific, just awesome, forefront, on the edge, really good punk rock, not Blink stuff, like underground Warped Tour, great rock. We had great success there. We were integrated into Warped Tour every tour. We had the tents. We were selling products. It was great. Wall Street came in and bought that label. And it was like, oh my gosh, they bought, I forget the exact percentage. So Kevin of the Warped Tour and Bob kind of bowed out, and Wall Street liked me, and they wanted to keep me around. So I remained GM. I had a staff of 40. Within 2 years, we had a staff of 10. And I had to do most of the hatchet. It was really difficult, and I let go of a lot of really cool people. Really, really cool. Wall Street continued to close the label, and the short story long is I turned the lights out at that label. So that was such a punch in the guts. I put so much sweat equity. I love the label. Everybody else did too. It was the punk rock ethos of indie, and just everything was working. So we turned out the lights there. I did have some consulting jobs at some very interesting places that I can't talk about publicly. But soon enough, I was able to find another job at Red Eye Distribution, which is one of the best indie distributors on the planet. They have probably 300 distributed labels. They hired me as global director of A&R. So finally, a job that I really wish I had even early on was A&R, artist and repertoire. Those are the people that sign the bands, sign the labels, do all of that work, listen to demos, determine if it's worthy or not. Love the job. Couldn't believe I had it. They were based in Chapel Hill. I remained in Brooklyn. I worked from home. I was going to and from every conference you could imagine, South by, you name it, CMJ. I was their New York guy. They were a very busy label. And I signed Loud and Wainwright. We won a Grammy for that, and they laid me off, and I just threw my hands up. I'm like, I said to one of the owners verbatim, I'm your top sales guy, and I don't even do sales. I just sign people. And they laid me off, and they also laid off their IT guy and director of marketing same day. So it was like, oh boy, a lot of growing pains there. At that point, Cherise, I was done. All right, music business, boy, I love you, but I have got to break up. So I opted to move. I always wanted to I knew so many friends from my days in Miami that were vagabonds that could just go work for 3 months somewhere, and then just travel the globe. So I'm going to move to Belize and open a pizza joint. I've been learning how to make pizza for about 3 months. I go down to Belize. I did this. I go there, and, one, they already had enough pizza joints, and it was right on the tail end of 2009 where the economy really hit the bed. And so I came back from Belize. I came back to my parents' home in Carrollwood. I had no idea what Chapter 2 was going to be. I went down to the Cultural Center in Carrollwood and said, hey, what do you guys do here? They're teaching all sorts of things, art. And I said, I'll teach drums. And they said, okay. So I brought down 3 drum sets, Jack Black style. We turned up Highway to Heck just so we could make everyone in that place leave. For 2 weeks straight, after those classes, everybody there wanted drum lessons. And I said, you bet. I will teach you drums. So I started private instruction. And before I knew it, I had 25 drum students, and I opened a home over in Plantation, made one of the rooms a drum studio. I taught 25 drum students. I'll rush it along. This brings us to investors came knocking. They said, what would you really like to do? And it was open a full-blown music school, but not in a strip mall, not next to a karate shop. I want to be in a home like Hogwarts, like this big, giant, cool place that we do all this. So we did that, and it worked, and it was really fantastic, and I was so tickled by it. It was bananas. I lived in the master. There was a stage in the foyer. So we did that for 2 years. It worked. The HOA came knocking, Housing Authority. What, are you out of your mind? And I was, and I had to go. Well, I didn't want to go to a retail spot, and I did not have the resources to do so. So I did a Kickstarter campaign. We raised $20,000. We were able to open this spot. We painted it up, made all the rooms, guitar, vocal, drum centric, band room. And we've been doing this 3 years. We run about 80 students through here a week. We have 4 bands under management at any given time. And in the next 3 weeks, this whole space will be transformed into a music venue. Also, in addition to lessons, one part of the space will be called Shinebox. And that will be a new music venue that will be presented to Tampa. Holy moly, how'd I do?
Wow. Take a breath.
I did.
I'm just thinking about everything that you just said, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned in the story that you just told about your life. I mean, you've got perseverance there, you've got adaptation. I mean, you've got a lot of interesting things there. And also, we could probably have a whole discussion on the music industry itself, how it's evolved through the years, because like you said, these record stores are no longer around. People are downloading music or streaming it, so there's not a whole lot of ways for people to sell their music other than live acts and merch. That's true. And these meet and greet things that they're doing now for the bigger bands. But just everything that you talked about really is the evolution of the last 25 years or so of how it's been for you personally, and also how unpredictable it could be. Even when you work your butt off and you do everything the right way, sometimes, crap happens. And you don't know why. There's stuff going on behind the scene that you don't even know about, I'm sure.
It's true.
And it's who you know, and it's there's just a lot of stuff, and there's just a lot of lessons that I think people could maybe learn just from hearing your story. What do you think?
Without sounding like my head's bigger than Hillsborough County, yes, there are some.
Really?
I will say that my company bought Napster, so I was in the middle of the whole thing, watched as that eroded, slowly watched it erode retail. All big boxes said the heck with music, used it as a loss leader. That was a huge Best Buy was selling music at a loss just to get you to buy microwaves. That was a huge impact. I could go on and on about these things.
Yeah, the whole thing has totally evolved. And the thing is, with labels, we're seeing a lot of DIY now. A lot of bands are starting their own labels now that you can do Pro Tools at home and you have GarageBand and all this. Students are learning how to do that as well. Do you delve in any of that here as far as production, like Pro Tools and stuff like that?
Well, no, not exactly. We do, all of our bands ultimately will record. We have several pieces of vinyl here, but as far as teaching, production, recording processes, no. We've considered it several times, and I have a feeling with the new live room with Shinebox that we will most likely open that component of either live sound education and or live sound recording. We have several instructors here that are interested in teaching that, so I think it would be a natural.
I like the idea of the Shinebox because, to be honest, there's not a whole lot of venues. It seems as the music changed, venues went under too. Now about a week and a half ago or so, Sick Hot performed at the brewery, and that was a really cool venue. They had a little stage and lights and everything. But I like the fact that you're offering a place where people can hear live music, because there's nothing like live music. Right. And where people could see the kids and adults, obviously.
Right. That's true. In Tampa specifically, we've had a couple losses, and there's nothing. When you're in the music sphere and you lose a venue, and I know a lot of people can contest, is when we lost New World Brewery. That was where do those 21 bands now play? Right? They do 3 bands a night, 7 days a week. Where do those 21 bands go? So we have we need more venues. Yeah. So for me, this is a no-brainer, and I look forward to doing it. I can't wait the walls come down next week.
There was one venue that I went to. It was near a skate park near Columbus. It was basically an industrial park. Yeah. And they had just what would you call it? A suite or whatever in an industrial park. And I know they do this overseas too, where they'll just take an industrial park and people will take lawn chairs, and they won't even have a stage, but they just play. Yeah. And that's how it is. So we'll revisit a lot of these topics again in the future. I'm sure I'll be talking to you again. Any closing thoughts or advice maybe for young up-and-coming bands?
Well, let me think about that. I'd like to say that as I'm doing some time here in Tampa. I don't know how long I will be here. I do know I'll be here for the next 3 years. I want to give every single thing I've ever learned in music back to the people and the students, the young people, anyone involved in music. I want to give all of that back to them, everything. That's what this Music Academy is about. We're teaching young people. We're shaping the future of music. And then with the live venue, I want to bring that, or make live venues or live music that more accessible to young people. So with that said, if you're a young person and you are looking, or you see these music videos on television or whatever you watch for music entertainment, if you strive to be that person, there are places that you can go that will teach you to do that. I have one of them. It's in Carrollwood. It's called Jim Chambers Music Box. And come give it a go. Don't let anyone prevent you from at least trying, and it'll be a wonderful experience.
Just out of curiosity, since actually we cover news internationally, do you do any kind of Skype lessons, or do you do consulting or give advice or whatever via Skype? Just out of curiosity.
I do a lot of consulting, more professional level band consulting on Skype. We tried lessons on Skype. We certainly can do them, but I did a few. But with bands, it's primarily Skype, and I do a lot of consulting. Yeah.
Okay, so bands, here you go. You can contact Jim Chambers for, since he obviously was in the industry for many years, maybe some consulting, and you could be anywhere in the United States, or you could be in the UK or whatever, right? Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining Rock at Night. All right.
I've had a blast doing this. I love your outfit. Not what you're wearing, but what you guys do there. And thank you for coming to our show last week and being interested, as you said, in education. And thank you.
Thank you.
You're listening to Rock at Night.